Hello, welcome back to BLENDERSUSHI Live Noding. In this episode, we're gonna take a look at the new node in Sverchok. It's called Texture Viewer, and it does exactly that. You can read the documentation of the Texture Viewer. If you go and just create a Texture Viewer, you will see it's a simple node but really powerful. It can display like a result of like a 2D value, x and how can I explain it? I think it's easier to demo this node than to talk about it. But if you want to see the documentation online or offline, I think you can select the node and click on this help button. So file save as texture viewer demo 001. I'll just save it. By itself, it does nothing, but if we provide some value, it will start to give you like a result. Let's say you want to have random number generator, for example, and plug this guy into that guy and increase the value, and you can start to see what's going on. By default, random number generator, of course, gonna generate like kind of like some kind of noise, right? And depending on the resolutions, you can start small, or 128 is kind of okay, medium, and then you can go large, but it's gonna be slower. But you can see 128 times 128, you need to provide that value as well. Like that's like 16,384. So that's quite a lot. Actually, you don't need to use calculator. You can just do it inside Sverchok. So 128 times 128 points. That's the size that we need to provide. It's already like 16,000 value. That's quite a lot, you know. It's quite. We often take for granted these days, like to have like a 2K, 4K, even 8K. That's a crazy, like huge amount of data. I remember in my college time we used to use just like 1024 or even 512 by 512 for the texture. So 512 by 512 is kind of nice, large texture. You can go higher. 2K, 4K, 8K is like crazy big amount. For now, just start small, 128 by 128. So you can see random number give you this kind of texture. If you want to see it more clearly, of course, you can use plane. Viewer draw. We're gonna have 128 by 128. Let's have a look. This guy is quite a lot already, see? If you look at it from the distance, it's already covering the whole thing. Look at it from the top. 128 is a lot of points. And if you use the value of random number and kind of push the points based on this, of course you get something that looks like a noise. Let's test it out. So this value is a scalar, of course. It's not a vector, but remember that our points is a vector value, and if we want to push it up, we need to push it up using vector. So vector math, we can plug the original points and we're gonna add them together. Vector in. So this can go to the z value, and then this push it up. So we get that result. You see the points get disturbed by this noise. If you want to take a look at the result into like a plane mesh, we can plug in the polygon and then turn off the points and also turn off these edges. Oh, we can have the edges on so we can see the noise, the result of the noise. So that's with the random number generator. You can also use like a float, so you have maybe smoother value, smoother kind of noise. Even though this is still random, still a little bit smoother. Let me try different value. You can see that's a noise. You can randomize the seed. and it's very interactive. It's really nice. It's give you a nice little preview, and if you like, you can also save it out. Select the node and you can save it into PNG, JPEG. Currently it's only outputting, I think, 8-bit. It's not like a 16-bit kind of texture yet, but maybe we're gonna have 16-bit texture at some point. For now, you can play around with this number. What's the best way to test this? Let's see. You can test it. You can test the the nodes like vector noise or fractal. They all will work with this. And before we go there, let's get rid of this random number. Let's try using our sine and cosine, if you like. Let's say for these vertices, I'm gonna separate it, and we know that the vector for this plane is growing in x and y, so we can use this value to generate our procedural texture and see the preview here and see the result in a viewer draw. So let's use some math. Sine and cosine, we already learned this simple texture, but it's a funky texture that I always like to do this every now and then. Sine, cosine, just add them together and you're gonna get this funky, like a rounded looking. If we just use the sine, let me just plug in the sine, we should get like a stripes. There you go. That's the sine, and you can of course control the frequency and things like that. So lots of math and formula and functions here. It's actually fun once you understand the basic. So see, you can control the frequency and maybe perhaps the amplitude and things like that. We can use vector math here to control the stepping as well. Have a smaller value, you see we have the stripes that's a little bit bigger, and you can also control the stepping of this guy, so make it smaller. So now we have like a super tiny little plane, but we're gonna have like a super high-res preview on the plane. So let's have a look. If we just plug in these stripes into our plane, you'll see, there you go. That's the sine, that's the effects of sine wave. Even though on the texture we only see like white and black, if we actually export it out and import it, you will see that the value is actually being clamped. So you always remember you need to normalize the value within like a 0 to 1 range, or you either do that or you output like a 16-bit value. So you need to map the range at some point, so it's not like black and white. It should be like a nice grayscale value. Let me try turning off the edges and turn on the shading. You see, that's the effects of sine wave. It's doing it twice. If we combine the sine wave and the cosine wave function, we should get like a square or maybe like a circle. Cosine give you the opposite of sine. It's like not the opposite, like one give you horizontal, one give you vertical, and then if you combine the two, you should get this, you see, like a circular kind of funky thing. Let's try using this, plug into the Z, and what do we get? We get this really nice kind of like a wave, like a bulging kind of structure. It's very nice, very pretty. result, and we can actually just bake this, and then that's one result. You can smooth it if you like, but this is just for the preview. If, like I said, if you want to bake this, make sure you kind of normalize the value, because otherwise it's gonna get clamped. What I mean is, even though it looks very smooth like this at the moment, but if you bake the texture and then you bring it back for as a displacement for using displacement modifier, you're gonna get like a clamp kind of result. The clamp kind of result will look like something like this. If I use a map range and let's map the value, you'll get something like this. Very interesting, but still it's weird. So that's a clamp value, and we don't actually want that. We want a smooth result. So how do we do that? How do we make it smooth? I think we need to perhaps to mine the value and try not to get clamped. We need to normalize it. I'll save as a new blend. Let me try to think how to prevent the clamping. Although this is nice. Maybe this value needs to be smaller. And yes, something like that. So the value is not clamped. I think that's actually better. And then what's happening is, if you export this guy now, you see that's not clamped. It's not like super white and super black, but it's still like kind of in there's a grayscale value, and then you can always push the displacement, so you keep the value within the range. That's very, very important. There you go. That's actually better. That's the value is now normalized. And with a normalized value, you can also kind of mix and match the texture. Like I said, you can use vector noise and vector fractal and kind of see the result. See, now since we have like a texture viewer here, we can have another texture viewer for the vector noise. Just simply plug in our wait. I'm gonna create another one of these. Plug the original plane vector into this guy, and plug this output into the vector noise. And I'll have another one also for vector fractal. And let's kind of do check the result here. Vector fractal outputting scalar, we get that. And vector noise, if we make it to output scalar, we get that result. So this is all scalar, and it's not outputting RGB or XYZ value yet, but this is really nice because we can mix and match now. It's very easy. And if you want to do something a little bit funky, like with a math function, let's say modulo, for example. If you use modulo, you can have like a repeat. Modulo sometimes give you very interesting results. See, modulo give you like a step, kind of like a weird repeating pattern. Maybe I can kind of have more repeat somehow if I use some math, increasing the frequency. Yeah, see, you get more like a step. And I'm wondering how this is gonna result with our surface, and you get something funky like that. It's really weird. Maybe it's too weird, but maybe something that you want to have. Now I'm not gonna use modulo, but I'm showing you. That's one example. What's really nice, of course, you can mix and match, like I said, and you can see clearly the preview from the preview. So if we just add all this together, 1, 2, 3, noise. This is from vector noise. This is from vector fractal. We can use Voronoi or maybe cell noise, funky cell noise, and let's add them together, and we will see how they result. We have map range from the sine and cos. This one I'll just use add. So we're gonna add this guy and the noise, and then we also gonna add one more thing. You see the cell noise and the sine cos working together, and then this guy, fractal, and we get this result. And that's really cool. The result can be as subtle or as complex as you want, but this is really nice. So 3 different procedural texture. Everything is just numbers, you know, basically numbers that range from 0 to 1 or even go outside the range, and you're kind of normalizing it and you're gonna output it. And the result, of course, you can have another viewer, plug in this guy, and that's actually the result of adding all of this together. You can also multiply and do subtract on, do things like that. You might get a more interesting result by adding and multiplying. Yeah, that's not too bad. Remember that you can also output a result. If you select this node and then you save, if you hit save, it's gonna save it into the temp directory. Let me check. It's gonna save it as image name. So, and it's only 128 by 128. In order to make it like a bigger texture, if I choose like 512 by 512, we need to actually increase this original plane to 512 by 512. So that's the only caveats at the moment. But still, this is a fun, like a fun nodes to use. Viewer node, very useful if you want to play around to generate like textures. Even though currently it's only black and white, but maybe one day it's gonna be RGB, and you can also kind of control the push in XYZ direction. Yeah, just give this a try. It's a quick look at these nodes that's currently still very early. Maybe it's still kind of work in progress. Maybe there's like a bug, or this can be made even faster. But you can already use this and test it to generate all kind of texture that you cannot that maybe you can't imagine yet. Of course, you're familiar with vector noise, vector fractal, and you're familiar with sine, cosine functions, but I'm always only showing like just the basic. There's like heaps of functions that you can try out there, and you can mix and match the value to get a result here. Okay, this is much larger texture, and you can see all this smaller texture doesn't work anymore, but this is the larger texture, 512 by 512, and then I can export this, save, and then it's saving. Now, okay, the texture just got updated. This is 512 by 512. of this texture. Okay, so that's pretty much a quick look at this texture viewer node in Sverchok. Feel free to give feedback to the developer at GitHub. If you have any simple question, you can ask in the comment section below. Yeah, just give this a try. It's really cool nodes inside Sverchok, and it's very powerful. Even though it's still early, it's already like quite. I'm amazed as the new developer come in and then they work together to create this texture viewer node. Thanks again to Sverchok developer for this cool node inside Blender. Yeah, thanks again for tuning in to Live Noding, and I'll see you in the next video.